Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, 5 Arguments Against AP Automation and Why They're Wrong, presented by AvidXchange. A little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can submit any questions you have. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar, and we will answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. We're also recording this presentation, and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees, as well as those who registered but were unable to attend. And finally, we would appreciate your participation in our closing survey. With that said, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to attend this webinar with us. We're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions, help you find an easier way to run your business by providing you with tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. We've invited AvidXchange here today because they are industry experts in AP automation. So whether you're here researching a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask all the questions you have. And lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. We encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Rhonda and Jack.
Thank you, Courtney. So hello, everyone. My name is Rhonda Greene, and I am a Principal Solutions Consultant here at AvidXchange. I've been at Avid now for 10 years, and prior to joining, I actually was a longtime former AP manager. That really, I've seen the transition from 100% paper, file cabinets everywhere, to automation. I actually helped implement AP automation at a couple different companies. So it's definitely something that I'm very near and dear to my heart. And thank you for joining us. And Jack, if you'd like to take a minute to introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you, Rhonda. My name is Jack Clarke. I'll be walking through the product demonstration portion today. To give you folks a little bit of a sneak peek as to how we help companies automate accounts payable. I've been in the industry for about 15 years, so as questions come up today, don't hesitate to submit those. We can certainly take some Q&A towards the end of the session.
Thanks, Jack. Next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about 5 arguments against AP automation and, of course, why they're wrong. So for our agenda, we're going to talk about the middle market technology adoption, 5 arguments against accounts payable and payment automation, AP automation with AvidXchange, and then at the end, we'll leave room for Q&A. So the middle market technology adoption. So why are we talking about the middle market? Well, that's because that's really where AvidXchange shines. And that's where we, really provide best-in-class automation for that size company. And we actually surveyed finance professionals about whether their organization has adopted automation technology into their finance departments and why or why not. We found that the majority of respondents, about 2/3, have adopted automation technology, and nearly 3/4 have plans to adopt tools or technology within the next 3 years. So as we can see here, 22% or 1/4 said that their business is actually focusing their spending on technology and IT. And as I mentioned, that 2/3 of those mid-market finance professionals says that they've already adopted automation. And a lot of times when I'm out in the field and I ask this question, and people will respond, yes, we've definitely, adopted automation. Sometimes they're just talking about a portion of the process. Maybe they're talking about their invoice capture. Or maybe they've automated a workflow approval process. But so I would definitely think that this number is actually smaller for full AP and payment automation, but at least companies are realizing that the future is in automation to make sure you have access to all of your data no matter where you are. And then, as we mentioned, nearly 3/4 of those middle market finance professionals say that their organization has planned to adopt tools and technologies. And I think we can all agree that the pandemic really, pushed a lot of professionals into looking more closely at automation. Unfortunately, people were without access to their information. They couldn't access their invoices. They couldn't cut checks. So, it forced, AP automation to kind of come to the forefront. And I think we definitely continue to see that today. Then we asked, what is the main reason why your organization has not adopted automation technology into your finance operations? And 21% said that they have other business challenges that they feel like they need to rectify first. 20% said cost. 18% said the training required to upskill employees. 12% said a lack of senior management awareness or buy-in. And 12% also said, we don't feel like we need automation tools. We also asked, what would motivate your organization to consider adopting an automation tool? And the top 3 answers that we heard were proven cost savings to help us grow our business, help with attracting and retaining talent, and onboarding services to train employees. And so that makes perfect sense. And really, I would say, and Jack would probably agree, that those are 3 of the top things that we hear on a consistent basis. So let's talk about those arguments against AP automation. The first one we hear is AP automation just simply costs too much. And in reality, that's not true for various reasons. So let's try to break that down. So custom automation workflows can eliminate the need to reach out to an approver every month about the same dollar amount threshold, definitely streamline those approvals. It can even reroute invoices. Someone's out of the office so that no time is lost in someone's queue. Also, it can provide gentle reminders that invoices are still awaiting approval. And it provides a central repository for anytime, anywhere access to your invoice data. And again, that is critical, that you have that ability to, recall that information should you have a question about it, should you need to share it with an auditor, that invoice information is right at your fingertips. According to a report from the Institute of Finance and Management, companies using limited or no automation spend on average $8.78 to process one invoice. And I know sometimes when we say that, we get some pushback. People can't believe that it costs that much. But really, if you sit down and add up all of the hard and soft costs associated with processing an invoice, you'll see that that can quickly add up, just even in the time spent alone. But for those that are using a high level of automation, the cost drops dramatically to $1.77. So that's saying manual processing, $8.78 for one invoice, automation, $1.77. So that right there, you can see just in that stat alone, the savings that can be gained. As you assess and figure out how much you can save with AP automation, factor in the cost of physical goods. So you've got to think about things also like, how much do the paper checks cost you? How much are those envelopes, and not to mention stamps. And I believe that the USPS just went up on their stamps cost. I believe it's up to 60 cents now. So you've got to make sure that you're considering all of those factors into the cost. According to Goldman Sachs, supplies alone, paper, postage, cost $1.55. And as I mentioned now, that would probably be more like $1.60. So cost too much? I don't think so. Number 2 is our business has more pressing needs. Well, AP automation not only streamlines both the invoice and the payment process, but it can actually help solve bigger business challenges as well. So things like staffing issues, being able to grow without adding additional headcount. According to Goldman Sachs, AP automation can drive 70 to 80% time savings for AP staff. Also, revenue growth. According to some AvidXchange research that we did earlier this year, the middle market companies that have adopted automation technology into their finance operations are more likely to indicate revenue growth over the past 2 years and say that current market conditions are good for their business. 83% of middle market companies that have adopted automation technology said their company has seen revenue growth over the past 2 years compared to only 61% of those who have not adopted some sort of automation technology. Business continuity, 78% feel the technology the organization has adopted in the last 2 years will have an impact on their business continuity moving forward. Absolutely, we saw that. Also, remote work is here to stay. AP automation allows employees to work remotely. And you know, if we think about that for a minute, AP, that team is not one in the past that was seen as really working from home or having that chance to work remote. So now with AP automation, people found because of the pandemic that as long as you have the access that you need and everything is automated, that's no issue, that your team does not have to be in the office. And then of course, fraud. AP automation can help increase security and prevent fraud in remote working environments. And supplier vendor relationships. 59% of middle market companies that have adopted automation technology said their relationships with their vendors are much better, or at least somewhat better now compared to 2 years ago. Only 38% who have not adopted automation technology said this. It's too hard to train our staff on new technologies. Well, I dare say that that might be true for some people, probably like myself in the older generation. But AP automation is certainly something that is easy to train and easy to learn. Take my word for it. But what we have seen is that many AP pros are actually nearing retirement age, myself included. And so it's expected from now through 2026, 2027 that 1 in 5 AP organizations expect to lose a significant share of their team members to retirement. And younger employees, millennials especially, expect automation and they want the ability to work on more strategic initiatives. They use finance technology in their personal lives. So if you think about it, they've already, have digital wallets, mobile check deposit, and they don't understand why their professional life should be any different. And quite frankly, we agree. According to Workday Global CFO Survey, CFOs are looking to their workforce to adapt along with the landscape and to become more savvy. 71% of respondents hope to close the gap on any new functions or capabilities they need to be able to add through upskilling as they look to, really future-proof their teams. And AvidXchange offers ongoing support and training resources to ensure this customer success. So if we look at the screen here, 24% of finance professionals said the biggest pain point is the high paper volume. Absolutely, it always has been, having to have file cabinets everywhere, having to pay for off-site storage so that you still have access to your invoices. And controllers say that they spend 31% of their time as a strategist, but they'd like that number to be closer to 51%. So basically what they're saying is they're spending too much time doing, traditional tasks and as it relates to AP, signing checks, making sure invoices are coded correctly, etc. So really, look for an AP automation partner that provides that ongoing support and training to ensure your success. Number 4, we can't get buy-in from senior leadership. Research actually shows that AP automation software helps improve processes. It saves money and it empowers employees. So really, it's a triple threat for leadership. So as far as talent goes, according to a Deloitte CFO Signals report, 60.7% of CFOs said that talent or labor was one of their top 3 priorities this year. That outpaced financial performance, growth, strategy, and cost management. Definitely with the Great Resignation continuing to happen, that is definitely top of mind for folks. Also, training. A survey of 800 finance executives sponsored by SAP suggested that 42% of finance activities can be fully automated using currently available technologies. 57% of senior finance executives want to use the time saved by automation to better train their teams in advanced financial and technical skills. And according to a Workday Global CFO survey, 35% of CFOs are looking to leverage automation to remove tedious and time-consuming work from employees, and also to improve the process. According to AvidXchange research, 35% of finance professionals said that AP and AR automation would help their team work more efficiently long-term. And then finally, we don't feel like we need automation tools. Companies that don't automate the AP function risk getting left behind, and that is with absolute certainty. So what are finance professionals saying? So 96% of CFOs have digitized or plan to with the AP and AR departments by the end of this year. 54% say that digitizing AP and AR to provide customers and vendors with more efficient payment processes. And also 79% of these professionals say that their organization is making more payments now through electronic methods than paper checks. And really that is key because, again, who has time for paper checks? In our personal lives, we don't write paper checks. My 90-year-old father might be the exception to that rule, but everyone else that I know, we just don't write checks, or if you do, it might be one a year. So the question really does remain, why can't we do that in our business lives? So that's what this webinar is all about, and Jack is now going to talk to you about what AP automation can look like with AvidXchange.
All right, so thank you, Rhonda, for kind of setting us up with some of the myths or kind of pitfalls that folks run into to try to automate accounts payable. What we're going to talk about now is really how automation is going to help you and how AvidXchange specifically can help really drive that efficiency and time savings that you're looking for and reduce the costs of the overall AP process. So when you look at a diagram like this, you probably see something that looks similar to your AP process today, especially if that's a manual process that involves many different touch points and many different people in the organization. So any accounts payable process could have anywhere from 12 to 15 or even more steps, depending on the nature of your organization, your approval process, how many different approvers have to actually see an invoice before it gets approved, and whether or not that process has any level of automation in it or not. What we do here at AvidXchange is really use a combination of technology and services to take a convoluted, complex process like this and really distill it down to give you the control where you need it and automate the rest. So we'll have the ability for you to immediately know when you have action to take through notifications, be able to code invoices and quickly approve those invoices from anywhere on the go, and then be able to automate the approval of the payment and we do the rest to deliver that payment to the supplier. So now we'll talk a little bit about how we do that and then give you a sneak peek into the AvidXchange platform. So when you think about invoices that need to be processed today, many organizations have done a great job over the last few years of getting those invoices sent to them via email. So step one for automation is really eliminating the paper. But we talk to a lot of organizations that today are still having somebody print out that invoice, or they're manually rekeying that information. So the first thing that will help you do is really streamline how invoices come into the organization and centralize that process. And we can do that through a variety of methods. So one of the things that you may want to consider as you're looking at AP automation solutions is, are they going to help to really alleviate that handling of the paper in my accounting department? One of the things that we see oftentimes is that there may be remote locations that receive invoices. There may be invoices that are coming in to specific departments in the organization. And typically those don't filter through to the accounting staff until they've been fully approved. And oftentimes there's bottlenecks in between. So the first thing we're going to do is capture the invoices, and we can do that through an email inbox. You'll have the ability to upload invoices directly into the system. And also we can set up a PO box for those organizations that are still receiving a lot of paper and haven't yet gotten their suppliers sending paperless invoices. This is really something that we can take off of your hands. So if you think about the different mechanisms for getting invoices into your approver's hands, you might have accounts payable people that are doing a lot of scanning and opening mail today. We can take that off of the plate and give you that time back and not have to really waste an accounting resource to be handling documents. What we're also going to do is extract the header level data from the invoice, and that will help create a digital version of the AP transaction that can then be forwarded on through the approval process to the appropriate managers. So if you think about sending invoices for approval today as an email attachment, those typically are going to go into the black hole of email, as I like to describe it, where you lose visibility to the status of the invoice and any of the activity that's taking place around that invoice until it comes back to the accounting staff. So it then becomes incumbent on accounting to follow up with approvers to find out what's going on. If there are issues or exceptions that need to be handled, that's all taking place in typically an offline manner without any kind of auditability or control or visibility to what's going on with the invoice. So what we're going to do is capture the invoice and push it into the approval workflow, but still give the accounting team visibility to what's going on with that invoice as it moves through the organization. And then there are organizations that may have various different types of invoice processes. So for those organizations that are typically involved in purchasing for inventory or in manufacturing, or even just using a purchase order process to maintain upfront cost control, what we're able to do is to leverage the purchase order activity from your accounting system and facilitate a 2- or 3-way PO match. So in the case where you have physical goods that are being received, we can pull the purchase order data, the line item information, and the receiving status out of your accounting system and marry that to the inbound invoice based on the purchase order number, and then flag the exceptions and automate the workflow for those invoices that match directly. So eliminating the need for the accounting staff to have to look at every single purchase order related invoice and compare that to the PO. Typically they're doing that visually and then having to go in and make adjustments when they are keying that transaction into the accounting system. We're going to use the information from the accounting system and the information that we populate from the invoice in order to facilitate the match and notify the approver of any of those type of exceptions that need to be managed. So if you have any type of variance between pricing that was agreed upon on the purchase order and what the invoice is billing you for, those type of exceptions can notify an approver that there's additional action to take. So it may require going back to the vendor and getting the invoice corrected to meet within your internal policies around purchase order matching, or you could set up a tolerance rule where you say we'll be okay with maybe a 5% variance in pricing, especially now with fluctuations in the supply chain. Sometimes the pricing or the cost of getting those goods delivered is going to change during that process. It could also factor in things like the shipping cost. So if shipping cost is something that is going to really need to be, scrutinized at a more granular level, you can set up rules that will notify an approver if there's an additional shipping amount that's been added to the invoice, or if that amount exceeds a particular threshold. So setting up those types of rules where the software can evaluate that purchase order match criteria and only notify the accounting team and the approvers that there's activity they need to pay attention to when those exceptions occur. And for the majority of the invoices that match, pushing those directly through to the accounting system or to the accounting team for their ability to control which invoices post into the accounting system. So this is really one thing that we'll see a lot of organizations, especially if you think about those folks that may have a heavy volume of purchase order related activity coming through their operations, being able to capture purchase order information, import that through automated API syncing with your accounting system, and allowing for those posted invoices to close out the purchase order process. So really eliminating multiple touch points that will typically take place in your manual process today. For the non-PO related invoices, we can set up flexible workflow rules that can leverage a variety of criteria to route the invoice to the appropriate approver. So if you have certain vendor categories where invoices need to go to a particular manager, whether those are under the responsibility of IT or HR or your operations team, you can differentiate what the approval path is and also have conditions built along the way that might escalate that invoice to additional approvers. So in many organizations, that's based on dollar thresholds, where you may have, say, a particular threshold for department heads, for directors, for executives, et cetera. And you could build in all of those various layers into the workflow to automatically have the system drive that invoice to the appropriate approvers and still give the accounting team the oversight before anything hits the GL. So you can always take the accounting staff that today may be, touching the invoices first, scanning them, sending them off to an approver, waiting for any responses with any coding to come back, and then manually entering that data, really moving from playing traffic cop on the invoice to really having the final oversight and control over what's ready to hit the GL. So this way you can really extend visibility to the approvers, set up rules that can also automate how bills get coded, and then auto route those to the right levels of approval before accounting sees the final invoice or gets notified that they may have action to take on that particular invoice. So again, minimizing the redundancy of the activity, providing the visibility, and then all of this data becomes available through a centralized repository. So all of your historical research becomes available at the fingertips of your approvers. They don't have to contact accounting to pull that data from a file folder or a cabinet, or to have to chase things down through an email thread that they have to search through to find out what occurred with a prior invoice. All of that history becomes available at their fingertips. And then that also allows you to provide more information for analysis. So an approver contacting a vendor could see whether that bill has been approved for payment yet, so that if they're getting billing questions, they can have visibility to what's going on real time with any of their activity. What you're also going to have the ability to do is really bypass a lot of the redundant steps where someone might either put coding in an email and have to have the accounting team transpose that into the accounting system, or even people that are writing that information on the invoice today. Coding rules can be set in the system for repetitive invoices to have automated coding, and we can set up smart coding rules that can help apply coding where there's logic that can be defined. And then you'll have the flexibility throughout the process to adjust that coding or dictate who can change coding at the department level or keep that in the accounting team's control. And then if you think about your payment process, this is really where AvidXchange provides unique capabilities around how payments are facilitated to your suppliers. So if you think about having to cut checks today and having a batch of check payments that you're going to print out and hand to a CFO for signature, and then have to have the accounting team package up all that check information and send that off to your vendors, and along with those material costs that Rhonda alluded to earlier, you could think about how much time is involved in that process. We're the only country in the the world really that's still heavily reliant on the paper check process from a business-to-business payment standpoint. If you think about your personal life and the last time that you wrote a check, it's probably few and far between in the amount of checks that you've written over the last year. Most of the consumer to business and business to consumer payments have moved to a digital format. And that's really where AvidXchange is going to help you make that transition. So even if you do have a notcha file that you send to your bank today, or you have payments that you make on a corporate card, what we do is really consolidate that process so you don't have to have 3 separate batches for the different methods of payment. You can create one batch for each checkbook that you're paying out of, approve that in AvidXchange, and then we'll facilitate that payment to the supplier. And how we do that is through our supplier network, where we've onboarded over 800,000 plus suppliers over the last 10 years of processing payments, which means that we have the largest supplier network in North America. We also know what all the mechanics and conditions are that the supplier requires for us to deliver payment as an electronic payment versus a check. So in the case where you think about your supplier base, you might be paying them via check today, but they might have automated systems to receive those payments as credit card payments, or they may have the request to have that payment processed as a direct deposit. They might also need remittance details depending on what the volume of invoice activity is that's going through a single vendor, and having to communicate back and forth with your accounting staff is just another touch point that we can help streamline. So we'll provide remittance advice with each payment to the supplier, indicating what amounts are applied to each invoices, so they don't have to go back and forth with your accounting staff. The suppliers are also going to have access online through a portal they can access to view that payment activity at any point in time. So you would become a new customer tab in a supplier's portal where they are already looking at real-time payment information and remittance details that are coming through from other customers in the AvidPay network. And then we take this a step further. So if you've ever gone through the exercise of trying to collect banking information from your suppliers to set up electronic payments, oftentimes it's very tedious and time consuming, and you've got to repeat, tracking down suppliers and communicating with those various different members of the organization to get that information and store that. And then you've got to maintain that information securely and keep it up to date. So we'll actually go through that process for you. And what we do is we go through what we call a just-in-time enrollment process. So this is something that we realized early on when we started processing payments, and we had customers that were trying to use their bank's payment services, but a lot of the work fell back onto the accounting staff, where the goal of that exercise was really to alleviate the time accounting was spending on the payment process. So what we do is we have a team with several hundred team members that actually reach out to the suppliers that are new to the AvidXchange payment network. So that 800,000 supplier number has grown organically over the years, and it's grown through our just-in-time enrollment process, where we reach out to the supplier and let them know that we have a check that's been approved to send to them on behalf of our customer, and we'll provide that invoice number and the check amount so they know that it's a payment that they're expecting to receive. We'll confirm the address that we imported from your accounting system to send that check to. But if we get that supplier on the phone and we're able to, have that conversation, we'll find out if there's a preference for them to take an electronic payment, or if they have any particular requirements that we need to follow in order to deliver that payment electronically versus sending them a physical check. As more and more companies, especially with, the need to be able to process remotely and receive payments in a more timely fashion, they're often, standard process now is taking that payment in an electronic method. So we'll determine what the mechanics are of delivering that payment, as well as any conditions that we might need to meet to provide a payment via an electronic method versus a check. But we're not going to hold up your payment process to try to do that conversion. We'll just send a check if we don't get in touch with the supplier, and let them know via email that we tried to contact them. We'll be reaching out the next time a payment comes through the approval process, and we can sign them up there at that point. So if you think about any of your payment processes today that might require you to create multiple batches, go through multiple different steps, maybe have different banks and different bank accounts for different corporate entities, we can consolidate all of that into a single process, streamline the approval, and then offload the work that typically goes into delivering that payment. And then along the way, this information syncing to and from your accounting system. So you'll still maintain your master records in the accounting system, where we'll pull vendor information, we'll pull your chart of accounts, your purchase order data, and then push the approved invoices into the accounting system, as well as post those payments against the invoices. So we can really streamline that entire life cycle of AP through technology and through our services team that's providing all of that insight and remittance detail to the suppliers to really cut down on that back and forth communication. And then we become the kind of first point of communication for any inquiry information related to payments. So that's kind of how AvidXchange works. What we're going to do now is talk a little bit more about our solutions for the specific accounting systems that we work with the SWK team on. So for any of your purchase to pay needs on Sage Intacct or Sage 100, our solution here is the Avid Strong Room platform, which is really a very scalable platform that provides an API automated connection to the accounting system to sync that data to and from. For our Acumatica customers, we offer a product called TimberScan Titanium, which has a seamless integration to Acumatica that also syncs via API. And so we'll walk through kind of a preview of these two solutions today, and then we'll take some questions before we wrap up. And we'd certainly be open to scheduling some one-on-one time with you if you do have some particular scenarios or challenges that you want to discuss and see how we can help to really automate the process. So hopefully that description of kind of the overview of what we do was helpful. Now we'll talk about some of the specifics. So if you think about your AP process today, and we're going to focus on Sage first, invoices are going to come into a centralized repository where you'll see all the invoice activity, and you'll have visibility from the accounting staff across statuses, across corporate entities. We can seamlessly populate information, notify approvers by prioritizing invoices, as well as allowing the approvers to add notifications and comments and details. And then we can track all of the invoice activity as those bills move through various layers of approval. So you'll be able to see exactly where an invoice is at any given time from the accounting team's perspective. From your approver's perspective, they'll have visibility to the invoice and the ability to adjust coding or see pre-populated coding. And we can take information like the account number from a vendor or a customer number from the vendor that displays on the invoice, marry that to the vendor ID that we import from the accounting system, and pre-populate coding distributions. So you can either code on the fly or set up predefined rules or save those rules as you begin coding various invoices. You'll always have side-by-side visibility to the invoice images, and we're actually going to push those images into Sage Intacct and push a link into Sage 100 so that you can have that visibility just as if you were manually entering the data and attaching that document today, except you're going to eliminate all of those repetitive steps that it takes to get that information to the accounting system. So we'll import your chart of accounts and mimic your ability to code the invoices. So if you have folks that are writing coding on the invoice today and the accounting team's having to go in and key that information in, that coding is going to pass through with the approved transaction when we sync that into the accounting system and eliminate that redundant touch point to that particular piece of information to get that expense coded to the right GL codes. What we're also going to do is be able to dictate role-based visibility, so you can define which functions approvers can have access to. So there might be certain approvers that only have visibility to their own invoice activity and maybe the ability to run reports or to search and export data from their own history, whereas you can extend global visibility across the organization for those folks that require it and give visibility to purchase order activity. So if you wanted to search and see if a PO had been received in the accounting system, you'll be able to see that status type of information. And then you could set up reports that can be emailed out to various different approvers in the organization or to finance team members with up-to-date information. So you can eliminate redundant activity where you might have to have someone compile reports before a weekly finance meeting. You could just have that report sent out to the team. All of this information is going to be available in the system throughout history. So from an audit perspective, you'll be able to search and export information to the accounting system. Now, in the case where we have purchase order related invoices and we've captured the PO information from the accounting system, we'll facilitate PO match rules. So if there's a variance in dollar amount, maybe there's multiple invoices that are going to be applied to a purchase order, we can have those invoices match, and for any exceptions, notification rules will flag you with the exceptions. So for example, if there's a particular bill that comes in that the quantity and dollar value match, but maybe the receiving hasn't been completed in the accounting system. So maybe that box is sitting on the loading dock, and as soon as the FedEx drop off took place, the vendor then sent the invoice. Once that status updates, it'll give you a green check mark and allow this invoice to move forward in the workflow. So you'll be able to dictate what those business rules are that are going to flag the exceptions around purchase orders and really eliminate having to treat every single PO related invoice the same. You can focus on the exceptions that require action. From an approval standpoint, you'll be able to post across multiple companies or corporate entities in a single step. And also we can pull in checking account balance information. So you can authorize payment across multiple checkbooks and multiple companies or entities from the same environment. You'll also be flagged with exceptions that'll prevent something from posting to the accounting system. So you'll know immediately if there's anything that you need to take action on. You can sync the rest of your invoices and come back and address that particular bill that may need to be coded or may have a matching rule that needs to be satisfied before it can post. So setting up alerts, notifications, and visibility to real-time status information is going to provide you with better insight as to what's going on and eliminate having to do the guesswork that may be required today when you're looking at every invoice the same way. You could scrutinize the exceptions versus having to scrutinize the general regular type of invoices that are coming through your process. And then you'll have visibility that could be based on access to information. So certain approvers could have visibility to payment information. We could search by payment method, by payment status, by date range. You could look for a particular batch of payments. You could see what payments are still outstanding that haven't been delivered yet. So giving you the flexibility to really extend visibility to folks that might not have access to the accounting system. If you have department heads that are getting on the phone with a vendor to order a service and that vendor has billing questions, they don't have to wait for accounting to respond or interrupt the accounting team to get that information. While they're on the phone, they can have it right at their fingertips and be proactive about providing information where it's needed internally and externally. And that same thing goes along the way of being able to run audit reports. So you can easily see the status from the beginning of when an invoice comes into the organization all the way through when that payment is cleared and seeing where that transaction has been posted, what method of payment was processed. And as AvidXchange makes that conversion from check to electronic payment, more and more of your activity is going to convert from a physical check to an electronic payment as we work with more and more of your supplier base to help onboard them to receive payments electronically. Finally, all of that detail is available in the system as well. So you'll see the same type of remittance advice that's going out to the supplier, and you'll also have visibility to the actual payment information. So you'll see the date and timestamp of when that payment was processed. One thing that we do that's unique compared to some of the other AP solutions that are processing payments as well is we'll debit your account to fund the payment individually. So you can have a one-to-one reconciliation back to your bank statement from the payments that are processed through the AvidPay workflow. So that's just an example of how our solution works with Sage Intacct and Sage 100 through our Strong Room platform. Now we're going to take a look at the Titanium platform. I'm going to go ahead and look to see if there's a question there. Okay, great. Just an internal question, so we'll come back to that. And so I'll just briefly touch on the Titanium solution. This actually originated from our construction clients, but really plays well with Acumatica and really provides some unique capabilities, especially for visibility and analysis. So as you can see, we have a graphical dashboard interface that's going to provide you with key metrics, and you can customize which users can see which information from a graphical standpoint at a glance and drill down into more granular detail from there. For the approvers, they're going to have the same type of visibility to documents, have access to the coding. In the case where purchase orders are being matched, it's going to capture the details, flag any exception criteria, and notify the approvers where they have action to take. From an audit trail standpoint, you're again capturing that full end-to-end audit trail of all of the approval steps. So this again becomes a centralized repository for all your AP activity and audit activity. Anytime there's a question from an auditor or you're doing internal research and you need to see where a particular invoice went for approval, where it might be stuck in the process, or who signed off on something at a particular level, you're always going to have that visibility real time. And then being able to do research and really generate reports on the fly, you can filter and sort across a variety of criteria and take that information offline. So again, being able to utilize the information that's already available in the organization, it just might only be visible to those people today that have access to the accounting system. You can really extend that to the folks in the field and at the department level. And all of your details here that go through the AP process are going to end up translating into your Acumatica environment, again, through an API sync. So it's automatically going to create that payables batch for you and eliminate you having to have multiple touch points to the same transactions. Invoices will be populated, and when we send the payment out through the AvidPay process, all of your payment history and remittance will be here as well. So really think of us as being a front end to your AP process in the accounting system. You'll have the ability for any of your vendors to receive the level of detail they need and eliminate the back and forth communication that typically is something that, you know, is really kind of plays second fiddle to the invoice automation side of the process. So when you're looking at AP as a holistic process, we can really help automate the entire life cycle. So I'm now going to pause and see if we have any questions here, or if there's anything that's come in through the chat that we need to address. So Courtney, let me know if there's any questions that the audience has submitted or anything that's come up that you want us to address.
Great, thank you, Jack and Rhonda, both of you, for sort of laying out those 5 pushback items and giving us a look into what AvidXchange can do. So we are going to open it up for questions now. We've already had a few come through. So we'll give everyone a minute to get their questions in. And just a reminder, we do have 2, AP automation subject matter experts here. So this is a great opportunity to have any questions answered in real time. So while we're letting everyone get, any new questions, and I'm going to go ahead and ask you, Jack and Rhonda, a couple questions that we have had throughout the presentation. So my first question that I have is, can we send all vendor payments through AvidXchange Pay?
I'll take that one, Jack. Certainly most of your vendor payments would be able to go through AvidPay. Sometimes though, you will have those vendors that just kind of pop in your office and you need to maybe cut a check right then. You certainly never lose the ability to process a payment in-house, but the vast majority of your B2B business payments will go through AvidPay.
Great, and I think you answered our second question there too, which was, can I still print checks? So I'm thinking yes, you can still print checks through all.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and then unless we get any other submissions here, our next question is, will my invoice approval process need to change?
I can take that one. So that really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. You can keep the same type of approval process and just really automate the redundant steps. Or, when we go to help onboard new customers, we have project managers that have a wealth of experience with all different types of industries and automating accounts payable, and they can often recommend the best practices to really make it simple for approvers to get the right level of information back to the accounting team and not have to, overly burden the staff when you introduce a new solution. One of those kind of misnomers that we addressed earlier was, getting a system like this adopted throughout the organization. It actually becomes very simple, and in a lot of cases we've had, the end user training session and an email notification goes out and the approver doesn't even know that it's a new process. They're just clicking on the link, approving, and then going about their day. It's really something that you can make available to make people's lives easier across the board.
Okay. And we've had another question come in. So we have a question about the cost and the cost structure of AvidXchange.
Yeah, I can take that one as well. So the good news with how AvidXchange prices our solution is that it's really based on your actual activity. So we basically charge per transaction, and we bill you based on the actual transactions that you've processed. So if you're processing, a certain number of invoices per month and a certain number of payments, you're going to get billed for the actual usage. So there's no user license component to it, as you're used to typically with accounting systems. You might want to control the headcount that has access. This is something that can be used to extend that visibility to anyone in the organization. So if you've got 200 locations with 400 approvers, it's going to be very scalable as you continue to grow. Or if you're concerned about having to manage the headcount and keep purchasing additional licenses, it becomes very easy to roll this out as you're continuing to grow the organization.
Great. And unless we have any last minute submissions here in the final seconds, I think that will conclude our Q&A for today. So again, I would like to thank you, Rhonda and Jack, for a great presentation and for taking the time to be with us today. And I also want to thank everyone in the audience for attending this webinar, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to your rep at SWK. They can connect you with, our AvidXchange and work to get you those answers, let you see the solution, really anything you need. So we hope you have a great day, and thank you, Rhonda and Jack.